1999 haben mir alle gesagt, du musst mit Martin Armstrong sprechen. Wenn sich jemand in den Märkten richtig auskennt, dann ist es er.
It's a very complicated issue. Now we're at the point of a sovereign debt crisis. This thing just reaches the edge and just goes boom.
Es geht um die Staatsschuldenkrise. Das ist das Hauptthema. Warum können Staaten dermaßen viele Schulden anhäufen, die sich ein Privatmann nicht leisten kann, und da eine Diskussion aufmachen, weil es könnte sein, dass diese Staaten eben ihre Schulden gar nicht zurückbezahlen können.
Welcome to Philadelphia. I'm Martin Armstrong. We all know something is wrong. You just cannot borrow forever with no intention of paying anything back. The reason we have this crisis is because since World War II, they basically have just had this idea that they can borrow year after year after year, never have to pay a damn thing back. The only country ever actually paid anything was Romania in 1980. That's it. It's the only exception I have found since going back to 6000 BC.
Ich habe in diesem Film um mein Leben geschnitten. Das war der schwierigste Film, den ich bisher im Schneideraum hatte, weil einfach die Finanzwelt so komplex ist, dass man sie fast nicht verstehen kann. Und das ist auch der Grund, warum der Film so wichtig ist. Was mir sehr wichtig ist, diesen Film mit dieser ambivalenten Persönlichkeit hätte ich niemals machen können, wenn der SWR nicht so sehr dahinter gestanden hätte und auch die MFG und mir vertraut hat, dass man auch so ein komplexes Thema ins Kino bringen kann. Und dafür möchte ich mich ganz besonders bedanken. Sonst hätte es nämlich wahrscheinlich gar niemand gegeben, der diesen Film finanziert hat. Sie haben es gemacht und ich habe versucht, dieses komplexe Thema in den Griff zu bekommen. Und das sieht man ja dann, wie es gelungen ist.
Der SWR ist so schrecklich arm, allein hätten wir das gar nicht hingekriegt, wenn es nicht Karl Bergengrün gäbe.
Wir sind froh, wir als MFG, dass wir unser Geld nicht in Aktien stecken, sondern in Filme. Das ist die viel bessere Investition, wenn es so tolle Dokumentarfilme sind. Wir haben unterstützt, nicht nur in der Produktion, sondern auch beim Verleih und wünschen uns einfach sehr, dass dieser Film, der so viel erzählt, in so kurzer Zeit wirklich so viel erzählt über unser Staatensystem und über unser Finanzsystem, dass er sein Publikum findet.
You lost friends in your life. You had been betrayed by people. You had been stabbed one time emotionally, which you don't want even to think about it. And you had been set up at least twice. Mm-hmm. You are not lucky with politicians. You are not lucky with police people. You are not lucky with army people. You are not lucky with any person wearing uniform.
That's true.
You are not. And every time you get closer to these people, you will find out that the fairy tale turning into a nightmare. Please shuffle the cards. And cut the cards.
Cut them, okay?
This is number 0, and you are going for a great period of being exposed and being in front of the public. You had been in a lonely island for a long time, and you came back ready. And you will teach people things that they never even thought about. And you are few minutes away before hitting the jackpot.
I've seen the completed film. I think I think he did a very good job. Would have been nice to get a few more of the facts in. Problem with the whole prosecution system, and in all governments, is that it becomes a personal issue and it's those people involved. It's not really the government as one entity. Actually, part of the things that the film didn't show was when they threw me in the hole, I was actually at that point in time answering questions to the House Banking Committee. So actually Congress then sends a letter in to find out who puts me in the hole. So it was you know, many different conflicts back and forth. And I think that largely the main reason I was willing to do this with Marcus, I had a couple of American firms that wanted to make a film, but honestly I didn't think that the truth would ever come out, because at the end somebody's going to pick up the phone and say, please don't do this. And the film would be killed.
Und ich habe ihn versucht zu bekommen und da kam er ins Gefängnis. Er ist mir entwischt. Und 7 Jahre später entdecke ich plötzlich im Internet, dass er seine Reports aus dem Gefängnis herausgeschmuggelt hat, handschriftlich aus dem Loch, aus der Einzelhaft. Und da fing ich an, seine Reports zu lesen. Mal Schreibmaschine geschrieben, mal handschriftlich geschrieben. 2, 3 Jahre und ich fand es wahnsinnig spannend, wie er aus dem Gefängnis heraus diese Märkte analysiert hat, weil er für meine Begriffe jemand ist, der leidenschaftlich ist und versucht, diese Märkte zu verstehen und sie als eine Kunst zu begreifen. Und er hat eigentlich letztendlich versucht, die Leute, die die Märkte manipulieren, nämlich nicht nur die Regierungen, aber auch den Club, so wie er den Club bezeichnet, große Banken, die versuchen letztendlich über Manipulation mal einen schnellen Gewinn zu machen, die hat er immer aufliegen lassen.
Moving and shaking this morning, Martin Armstrong, who's responsible for one of the largest Ponzi schemes in history, well, he's back. He cheated investors out of $700 million and spent 11 years in prison. Now he's being praised by followers on the internet for his calls. Among his fans, commodities investor Jim Rogers, who praises Armstrong for his historical knowledge and insight. His website gets more than 200,000 views per month.
Why are you still alive? Because, let me explain my question. Because when you are invited to this club and you know everything about this club and you say no, it's unbelievable for me that you can be still alive.
Well, I think it's a good question. And pretty much everybody around me ended up dead. That's true. And there are a few people that were in the club. One of them, I believe, was a famous British guy, Maxwell, who suddenly fell off his yacht and drowned after losing a few £100 million. But largely, it's a conflict between the banks in New York, which are controlling government, etc. But at the same time, there are others in government and banking committee, etc., in Congress. When the 07 crash came, I'm the only guy on the opposite side. So they come to me having to answer questions. They didn't even know what repo was. And they asked me a simple question: why did Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns fall in 24 hours? And I said, it's the repo market, because it's money that's overnight. And they said, what is that? I said, it's what you regulate. They didn't even know that. So it's a very difficult thing, but I would say that's why I stay in the front. If you're going to hide in a corner, then it's very easy to just take somebody out.
I guess we're gonna have to put it over here. It starts in August of 1999. This is when this scheme appears to take over Russia for the commodities, oil, gold. This is really what they wanted access to. Edmund Saffer's the primary mover, the brains behind this stuff. Edmund was chairman of Republic Bank. They usually do this in groups, but Safra is the one who's up front. All these guys were like somehow behind the curtain, all trading together and stuff like that. Khashoggi, Gaddafi, they were involved. The counter-revolutionary movement for Iran, they were trading commodities to earn money. It was like one giant masquerade party. Nobody was ever whoever you thought they were. They would say, somebody wants you to manage money. Yeah, who? Well, I can't say who. You come over and you meet them. Okay, you go over to meet them, and they have a curtain here. You're not even allowed to see the person. I said, yeah, what is this? You know, forget it, not interested. I go in to know who's on the other side of the curtain. Yes, I believe Dave took over government. That's the name of the game. That's how they make money. They're not manipulating the whole scheme with a long-term plan. That's not profitable. All they're looking at is how much can I make for this quarter. They're not about to spend a shitload of money for something 20 years down the road. I think it fits a very fair representation of what happened, and the government and stuff, they were given plenty of opportunities to please step forward and say something, but nobody would, so it's been interesting.
Und das ist vielleicht auch der Grund, warum man ihn mundtot gemacht hat, weil diese Leute einfach wollten eher ihre Manipulationen so im Geheimen und für sich machen. Und er ist eben kein Manipulator. Und das ist genau das, um was es hier geht. Regierungen manipulieren. Die möchten einfach diese Krisen, diese Zyklen nicht wahrhaben. Und denken, sie können sie beeinflussen. Sie können sie beeinflussen. Für eine lange Zeit. Aber wehe, wenn dann dieser Trend zurückgeht, dann geht er sehr drastisch zurück.
October 1st, 2015 has been mentioned. What is your specific forecast for Germany and for Europe, especially with regard to the option of war and well, the big bang, the big crash that a lot of people are expecting and are surprised that we haven't seen it already?
I think the October 1st is when the U.S. economy will start to turn down. The economy has already been turning down from China, Russia, and Europe. Just have to ask yourself this question. Every country has been just borrowing year after year after year. They never pay anything off. At interest rates at the current level, the U.S. will end up spending more on interest to roll the debt than on defense by 2020. The interest expenditures are pushing everything out. That is what will cause the crash. And the crash this time is not the stock market, it's not private assets, it's really in government bonds. I mean, the elderly have been counting on, they were told to save, and that will be your retirement. Oh, now they take interest rates negative. So there's no place for all this to go. This has to be resolved.
Marty was asked to participate in a Russian bond arbitrage, something to do with the issuance of Russian debt based on the thinking that the political situation in Russia was a shoo-in and that these bonds would never be defaulted on, no matter what, and that there was a guaranteed rate of return to be had, and it was a perfect trade for the investment banking community.
They put on a dinner for the IMF, Edmund Safra did, in Washington, D.C. They rented the whole National Gallery. I was invited down there. It was basically to show me that, look, you know, why don't you join us? We got the IMF in our pocket. And, you know, stop going against this all the time. And I said, I'm sorry. You know, Russia's going to collapse. I don't care who you have and who you're paying. It's not going to work.
Marty refused to participate. His economic models, his study of history, international capital flows, all told him that Russia was going to collapse. And lo and behold, we had the Russian financial crisis of 1997-98, where the country effectively went bankrupt and the bonds were defaulted on.
Martin Armstrong sagt, warum lebt ihr nicht mit den Zyklen und versucht in den Zyklen euch vorzubereiten, anstatt immer die Zyklen zu beeinflussen. Und das machen Regierungen wie Spekulanten, die auf den schnellen Profit aus sind. Und da unterscheidet er sich. Und das war mir auch ein Anliegen, letztendlich zu sagen, nicht alle, die jetzt an der Börse sind oder sich über Finanzen, mit Finanzen auskennen, sind per se Verbrecher, sondern es gibt Leute, die sind nur daran interessiert, schnell Geld zu machen, und andere sind daran interessiert, herauszufinden, wie unsere Welt funktioniert. Und er, der letztendlich sich mit Geschichte so sehr beschäftigt hat und mit Philosophie und mit Computern. Er ist ja ein Programmierer selber und dann auch noch self-taught, also sich das alles selber beigebracht hat. Ich fand einfach, dass es eine sehr spannende Persönlichkeit ist, und ich finde, es lohnt sich, ihm auf jeden Fall zuzuhören und sich mehr mit dieser Thematik zu beschäftigen.
The banks controlled pretty much the government. And how they do that is simply that the U.S. government doesn't sell its debt directly. It goes through what is called primary dealers. So it sells the debt to the banks then resell it. So every time they've gotten in trouble, they've said, hey, if you don't bail me out, you can't sell your debt. And this is the control that the banks have had over the government.
Well, I think the main reason I was willing to do the film is that we have to really look at what's happening with government and the debts. And the banks do have a control over the government. They always get bailed out because they basically sell the government debt. And so the argument is, if they don't get bailed out, then what happens is then the government can't sell it. So I think we're reaching a major point where this is all going to be coming to a head. And the things that I was talking about in 1999 are now pretty common out there. Everybody knows about LIBOR scandal, manipulations of just about every commodity around. So it's all becoming common knowledge today, I think.
Marty's laptop was maybe the very first one I ever saw.
It has charts on here which Martin Armstrong produced himself. These remain on the computer because they've never been changed, because they've not been updated for 13 years.
The model's still in there. If you tried to break into the operating system and went into an executable file, it'll destroy the hard drive. They never got there. They never got into this.
The security system was that every computer in the entire organization pinged each other to make sure everybody's there. You take one out, something's wrong, somebody's missing, self-destruct, everything was wiped out.
Some of Marty's systems were under attack, and we built honey traps to try to track these people back. Obviously, we were backtracking to certain IP addresses in Langley, Virginia, that were allocated to government agencies.
Die Karin Steinberger ist von der Süddeutschen Zeitung und ist eine Top-Journalistin. Und ich brauchte jemanden an meiner Seite, der letztendlich auch von der Recherche eine andere ein anderes Talent mitbringt, weil ich wollte mich nicht verlieren nur im Geschichten erzählen, sondern ich wollte schon jemand an der Seite haben, der mich auch immer wieder auf Kurs bringt. Nicht, dass ich einer Geschichte verfalle. Und deswegen habe ich mich entschlossen, den mit einer Journalistin zusammen zu machen. Und wir hatten das auch beim Hunger gemacht. Ich habe einen Film über Hunger gemacht. Aus demselben Grund. Das Thema war so komplex. Woher kommt der Hunger, dass ich mich auch da für eine Co-Regisseurin entschieden habe, die aus dem Journalismus kommt. Weil ich finde, dass die beiden Sachen sich ganz gut verbinden.
It's August 1999. Yeltsin's going to run for election in 2000. I believe they were trying to get Russia in their grasp by forcing Yeltsin to step down and putting one of Saffer's friends in there. Baryshnovsky is part of their deal to appoint him as president. Baryshnovsky owned in Russia the TV stations, Arafat, and they get Yeltsin to take $7 billion from the IMF loans. And then that money is going to Geneva under the pretense of being a fee for refurbishing the Kremlin. But the wire is steered through Bank in New York, when Republic is the #1 bank that all this Russian stuff always goes through anyhow. So it's strange that this one $7 billion goes through Bank in New York. Now, Saffer runs to the government and says, oh, it looks like Bank of New York just did a $7 billion money laundering. Now, they threaten Yeltsin. You're not going to run for election in 2000. Otherwise, all this is going to come out that you stole $7 billion from the IMF. So, Yeltsin realizes he's been set up. They then say, look, we'll protect you, but you resign.
Der Dokumentarfilm ist ja per se, hat immer könnte was Trockenes haben. Und mir geht es eigentlich darum, dass Dokumentarfilme eben, auch wenn man Interviews braucht, um bestimmte Dinge zu erklären, auch groß daherkommen und auch einen fiktionalen Charme haben. Und deswegen haben wir uns auch bei diesem Film entschieden, in CinemaScope zu drehen. Einfach um dem Zuschauer auch was zu bieten und dass er letztendlich sich in so einen Film fallen lassen kann und nachher auch wieder rauskommt. Es war ähnlich wie als wir das Kino Cinema Jenin aufgebaut haben, war es mir sehr wichtig, dass in diesem Kino ein toller Ton ist, ein tolles Bild, weil ich einfach glaube, dass das ist, was wir als Dokumentarfilmer vermitteln müssen, dass Dokumentarfilme so spannend sein können wie Spielfilme und auch so ästhetisch gedreht sind. Und dass man sich immer wieder dem Thema Dokumentarfilm nähert und öffnet. Ich liebe Spielfilme. Jetzt bin ich nun mal im Dokumentarfilm zu Hause und finde einfach, dass man diesen Filmen diese Wertigkeit geben muss.
Thank you for coming, Martin Armstrong. Thank you for this great evening, for this big information we had, for this Q&A. Marcus Vetter, thank you for this very important film. Und Ihnen, meine Damen und Herren, vielen Dank, dass Sie da waren, dass Sie sich so eingebracht haben. Es war sehr spannend für uns alle.
Martin Armstrong ist einer der Investitionsberater der USA. Weiß er mehr als alle Wirtschafts- und Finanzwissenschaftler zusammen?
He predicted the top in the Nikkei index.
He was forecasting that there would be a crash in the stock markets.
Obviously, that prediction was correct.
Politicians were corrupt back then as they are today. Those who do know that they're going to invade something start moving money in advance.
Alle wollten seinen Code, der die Weltökonomie erschreckend präzise vorhersagen kann.
We want the source code. Not getting it.
Martin Armstrong wurde 1999 verhaftet und ohne Prozess für 12 Jahre weggesperrt. Der größte Finanzskandal des 20. Jahrhunderts. Wollte man einen Unbequemen zum Schweigen bringen?
We did not feel like he was ever going to get out.
So it became a battle between them and me.
Staaten machen Milliarden Schulden. Doch wer zahlt dafür? Hat Martin Armstrong eine Lösung?